best neighborhood or the worst neighborhood?
When I was growing up here, it was a predominantly blue-collar, father working, mother staying home neighborhood. It's deteriorated a lot. And the feeling among us is pretty much the same, is that we don't want to let it go. How do we take it back to what it was, make it home again?
The potential is here, and it's just getting someone to take the first step to do it, to say, to believe that it can change. That's really what it takes.
It's a very valuable place. It has a lot of people who have deep roots to Burlington. Has a lot of history in it. And it's right next to downtown. It's flat, it's accessible. It has a natural park to the north, it has the lake to the west. It's right there.
The Old North End of Burlington, Vermont is a neighborhood with a long history. Generations of people from many cultures built it, and they continue to shape it. Today, this community faces the difficult problem of finding a balance between the traditions which made it strong and new forces which are beginning to change it. The people of the Old North End wonder how their lives will be affected by Burlington's expanding downtown, by its need for more housing, and by a proposed multi-million-dollar waterfront development. They're concerned about losing something important, something that makes their neighborhood special. But what makes the Old North End worth caring about? If you ask people from the area, they'll tell you about a neighborhood of small houses.
You just look at the streets. Beautiful architecture. Little houses with little differences. Window structures, cornices, porches, whatever. There is a difference. Very day, I just walk up and down streets off North Street. Beautiful little houses.
They'll talk about the stores.
Yeah, I think that's one really neat thing about the Old North End. See all the little corner stores, the mom and pop stores. You go in there and you gossip and you come back out and you've got what you needed and you just walk down a block and you're home.
Most of all, though, they'll tell you about the people.
There's a real family atmosphere here. Everybody watches everybody else's house and looks after one another. Most of the people that live right here on this street are all relatives. They're staying right here in this neighborhood. This is their home, and they have a lot of pride in where they started, regardless of what goes on around them.
I think if the elderly stay in the neighborhood, that helps, because it gives a kind of base, a kind of security, kind of belonging. I think that's important. Even names, I think, are important. And when you talk about housing, you say, well, the Pichets used to live here, the Beauregards used to live there, the Olsons lived there. That is a sense of roots. That's a sense of heritage, okay? North End was known for that.
For more than 150 years, people have worked, played, and worshipped in the Old North End. They came from across the seas and from right down the road.
My grandparents came here from Port Kent, New York.
My father came to Berlin 105 years ago this year. Left his little town near the German border.
And my father came down from Henryville, Quebec.
I came here in 1914, and the city I was brought up in, it was a free republic of Bremen.
My mother and father came over from Kovno, Poland.
We were mixed. We were Christian, Jew, Catholic, Orthodox. We were Greek, Irish, Syrian, French, Canadians, Americans. We shared each other's traditions and we respected each other's traditions.
The Old North End used to be farmland. The neighborhood began to develop when the Champlain Glass Works opened on what is now Park Street in 1827. The company provided housing for its workers as well as jobs. Some of these homes are still standing on George Street. Other industries soon followed. By the late 1850s, textile mills in Winooski and the railroad, lumber mills, and manufacturing industries along the waterfront were prospering. Located within walking distance of these two areas, the Old North End was home to factory workers, as well as blacksmiths, carpenters, dressmakers, and shopkeepers. Most of the early residents were New Englanders, but they were soon joined by French Canadian and Irish immigrants. The majority of these immigrants were Catholic, and for several years they shared a church near Prospect Street. Language and cultural differences divided the congregation, however, and by 1850 the French Canadians had built their own church. By 1860, so many French Canadians had come to Burlington that they made up 1/7 of the city's population, with most of them living in the Old North End. In 1883, they began construction of the present St. Joseph's Church in the center of the French Canadian neighborhood.
If you look beyond St. Louis Street, you go on down to Spring Street, LaFountain, Rose, Champlain, all the way down to North Avenue. It was all French Canadian. As all these people worked, many of them began to save money, and they built their own homes or bought homes in the North End. Sometimes it took a couple of years to build a house, but everybody chipped in and helped. You did the plumbing on my house, and I did the carpentry in your house, and she did the electricity on the house, and then we swapped around on houses. So, but also there were contractors. If you go down some of the streets, you'll see the identical houses. They might be twisted a little bit, you know, one's got a different porch or a different roof, but basically they're all the same plan, the same houses, and one contractor would build the whole streets of them.
Within the large French Canadian and Irish community were smaller clusters of different ethnic groups. For example, the Germans settled around North Avenue and Crowley Street at the northern edge of the neighborhood.
All these Germans who were together felt dreadfully lonely because they were used to having a lot of music, wonderful social life, you know, and parties, and well, anyway, in 82, we said, let us start a club, and it will be called the Goethe Lodge, and the motto will be friendship, love, and humanity.
A large number of Jews arrived in the 1870s. They settled in a triangle of streets in the northeastern section of the neighborhood. Since they couldn't ride on the Sabbath, their place of worship was close to their homes. The first synagogue was built on Archibald Street in 1884. Within the next 20 years, 2 more synagogues were established in the area. Most of the Jews were from Eastern Europe, and they worked as peddlers, junk dealers, and merchants.
Let's talk about the poor peddler. He would have lived in the North End. He'd start out early morning and trudge the highways and trying to gather enough money to be able to send a ticket for his wife or for his family. And then came the advent of the junk shop, which was very important for the growth of the Jewish community. Then, of course, you had the more affluent merchant who opened up a little store.
Other immigrants, such as Greeks and Italians, also opened small businesses. By 1925, North Street was a thriving center of commercial activity in the neighborhood.
Our whole lives were centered in this core. We shopped here, we went to church here, we went to school here. All of the business people owned and lived in the same place as their businesses.
Everybody always came to North Street. They had a drugstore on the corner, and they had little grocery stores and little different kinds of stores all the way down through them. And the bakery used to be here too. That's what that slice of bread is out there. Do you see it? Did you see that slice of bread right on this building out here? Years and years and years ago, there was a bakery here for a while.
Of course, when I was a young fellow on Interval Avenue, North Street was a real shopping center. We had a shoe store there, we had a hardware store, we had a fruit store, You had just about everything on North Street, and so it was a hub. You had two good department stores there, which now is Gaines, used to be Maisels, where Mel's drugstore is. Across the street you had Bloomberg's, one of the largest shoe stores in New England, was there. Then just below him was Frank's Economy store, which was a large major department store, really, run by a family. Well, Abe Lukowski ran a hardware store. You could have bought anything there. If you had a lock that was 20 years old, you went there and Abe gave you a spring for the lock, you know. It was just a fantastic place. Abe passed away, something happened there. Nobody carried it on. They just sold the stuff out. Then all at once, these things started to move off of North Street.
That was the decline of a small store like my father's, just as it was the beginning of the decline of Maisels and Bloomberg's and Frank's and Gelano's Bakery, because they couldn't compete anymore.